This video is going to provide you with some resources and information that you can use to support your understanding of Unit 7, Day 32, the quadratic formula. Why do we need the quadratic formula to help us solve some quadratic equations? And so we're going to go through some information about the quadratic formula so that you can have a clear understanding of it to successfully work through the problems within that lesson. So, standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. You could see that written right here. Understanding standard form and being able to identify the a, b, and c term is going to be critical for you to be able to write an equation, solve an equation using the quadratic formula. And so here's an example of a quadratic equation. And we would identify a. A is 1. It's the whatever coefficient is with the squared term. B is going to be -5. It's the coefficient of the constant term, and then C is -14. Be careful with the signs because that's something that people will often forget. They might just write 14 instead of -14. So we're going to use the quadratic formula, which is right here, to solve quadratic equations. This is the quadratic formula. This is standard form, and this is how we take the values of a, b, and c, and we input them into this formula, and this formula will give us the solution to a quadratic equation. The way we read it is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. And it's really great if you can memorize this formula because it will help you. But on the regions and throughout math, there are resources available that will provide you with it. So you don't need to memorize it, but it is helpful to memorize it because you will use it often throughout your mathematics career. And so this is just the template that you'll see used on the next page. But again, just noticing that these spots where the variables are being filled in, and noticing that this means 4 times a times c. And one important thing about this is using order of operations to avoid making a mistake. Okay, so let's look at an example. So here's the one from the beginning. Step 1, you want to identify a, b, and c, and it's helpful to write that down. Step 2, we're going to substitute a, b, and c into the formula. So in this case, we're going to replace b with -5. We're going to replace a with 1. And we're going to replace c with -14. And remember, this is 2 times 1. Okay. Be careful with this part. It's -5. If you're putting it into a calculator, you need to put the -5 in parentheses. If you don't put the parentheses in when you input it into a calculator, it's not going to think -5 times -5, which is +25. It's going to think you're saying, what's the opposite of 5 squared? And it's going to give you a -25. This is where it's important to have an understanding of math because calculators can make mistakes. Okay, so after we have it inputted into and substituted in, now we're going to multiply. Using order of operations, we're just going to multiply all of the parts within the equation that can be multiplied. And we're also going to kind of right here distribute that negative. So the opposite of -5 is 5. Plus or minus the square root of -5 times -5, which is 25. And then be careful here. This would be -4 times 1 times -14, which is 56, all divided by 2 times 1, which becomes 2. So now this looks a lot more accessible, a lot friendlier. Step 4, we're just going to add what's inside those parentheses. Sorry, what's under that square root. 25 plus 56 is 81. Don't forget, this is plus or minus. So there's two things, 5 plus this and 5 minus this. Next, we're going to do the square root. And if you can look here, I'm saying 5 plus 9, 5 minus 9. I split this up now into 2 different equations. Divided by 2. We're going to add or combine those 2 values. 14 divided by 2. And this is going to be -4 divided by 2. And then we're going to divide, and we're going to get 7 and -2. So x equals 7 or x equals -2. Okay, so there's a lot of steps, and that's why it's important to go step by step by step by step. If you try to simplify the whole thing at once, it's going to be very difficult, and it's more likely that you'll make a mistake. In addition, if you try to input this all into the calculator, there are so many spots for parentheses and little mistakes the calculator can make. It's important that you take it one step at a time and simplify each part. So again, here are the tips with your calculator. Use the calculator to check your work, right? If you're using a graphing calculator, you can physically graph it. You can also just use the Desmos calculator. Do not type the whole equation into the calculator at once, not for the graph, but that's for when you're doing this. Don't just type this into a calculator. It's going to be more likely that you'll make a mistake. Use Gemma and double and triple check your work, because using the quadratic equation is something that students make mistakes on very, very often. Okay, and again, here are the steps laid out again for you. Make sure the quadratic equation is in standard form. Rearrange it if necessary. Identify A, B, and C, and pay close attention to the plus and minus signs. Plug or substitute A, B, and C into the formula, and then simplify. Simplify the numerator and denominator, split in two answers, one with a positive sign and one with a negative sign, which you saw us do. Simplify the two numerators if possible, and divide last. Okay? Within here, you have another example that you can view as long as this slideshow has been shared with you, which will go through how to solve use 2x squared minus 3x minus 5. And that is it. So in summary, it is important to take a very careful approach when solving something using quadratic formula, and double and triple check your work, and do not solve it all at once in the calculator. At the end of this slideshow, which should be shared with you, are some fun songs that will help you to better understand and memorize the quadratic formula that you should check out if you have some time.